Alright, step manipulation. This is what makes a Final Fantasy V the speedrun it is. As a raw definition, step manipulation is performing a pattern known ahead of time in order to interrupt the random encounters through events. This is done for a couple reasons, knowing when and what encounters you will get. This is a huge deal for this speedrun, because you can eliminate the random encounters you will flee from otherwise, while only engaging the formations the route demands. You might be asking yourself, should I learn step manipulation? My answer to that is, it depends on how seriously you are going to take the game. Top times need step manipulation to compete, that's non-negotiable. Any random you don't want loses approximately 7 seconds of time loss per encounter, and that's going to add up over the course of a 4-hour speedrun. For entry-level speedrunners, I recommend learning step manipulation for at least the first hour of the run, up to the Karnak explosion sequence. The reason for this is that in this Nightmare dungeon, you can encounter a Sergeant with 3 Karnaks. This formation is nearly impossible to run away from, and by this point in the run, we cannot have the skills Escape, Smoke, or Hide. You can escape from this encounter with some insane luck, but realistically, it's faster to defeat the Nags and force the Sergeant to flee instead. Now, why is this a big deal? The extra experience is going to bump your party by a level, which ruins the Aegir catch setup. Your damage will get too strong. You can survive with this extra experience. It used to be a much bigger concern for runs that had to learn level 5 Doom by the Ancient Library. Here, the extra experience is an annoyance, but it can be avoided if you put in the effort to learn step manipulation. You might as well seize the opportunity and extend manipulation to guarantee mini-dragons, but that is up to you. Before getting started, I will show you how to set up the step Lua script developed by Samurai Goro. Lua is a programming language that most retro emulators can run to alter how a game behaves. The step Luas we will use are going to place a bunch of fancy numbers on screen, which we will constantly reference to ensure we're following the step route properly. Now then, you want to go to Samurai Goro's website and save all 3 Lua script files for the emulator you are using. For this guide, I will use SNES 9X re-recording. Right-click on the name of each file and select Save Link As, and save all 3 files on the same folder. Be sure to save them as Lua files and not as TXT files. Otherwise, just change the extension by renaming it manually. If done correctly, you can go to SNES 9X re-recording, boot up the game, and run a new Lua script window with the FF5 main Lua. You will see Samurai Goro's credits on the title screen, and if you see numbers come up when you select a new game, it means we did this successfully. With the Lua script up and running, I can explain a few more concepts. The way I will approach this is very simplified, but it will give you a basic understanding on how encounters work. With the exception of internal timers, events in FF5 are completely tile-based. Nothing will happen until Bartz moves around. This is because the game has a hidden lookup table that determines when encounters happen, and it advances every time you take a step. Random battles are triggered by the lookup table and the danger of the room, which for brevity I collectively call this the danger rate. When in dungeons or the overworld, you might notice the Lua displays some pink numbers to the left of the screen. These are the danger values of the room. An encounter is going to happen when one of these reaches 0. What we want to do is interrupt these counters with room transitions in order to refresh them, and in doing so, we eliminate the random encounter that was going to happen. The Lua displays 4 different danger counters. Each area of the game is only going to take one of these into account. Say, when using the STEM ship, the correct danger to reference will be sea steps. I will point out which counter corresponds to what area during the guide. As for the enemy domains, Each room can spawn up to 4 different enemy formations. The enemy groups reference a couple things: the lookup table, once again, and your seed. For the speedrun, we always have a consistent seed because, guess what? When you boot up a new game, your seed will always stay the same, starting at seed 0. Knowing this, we will always have the same order of enemy groups when we start a run, and can plan the step route ahead of time. The seed 0 groups are as follows. If you would like, you can learn specific chains for step manipulation backups, but that will be tricky to recover anyway. Every time you engage battle with a random encounter, the enemy group list will advance by 1, progressing to the next formation. Boss battles do not advance the lookup table. It is worth noting that if you choose to reload a save mid-run, the game generates a new seed over the one you have, so reloading for any reason will kill the step manipulation. The danger rate is present throughout the entire game, and it advances on any area that spawns random encounters. As a rule of thumb, if there is an NPC in a room, the danger rate will not advance. You are free to walk around in towns or save point rooms without advancing the danger rate, with 3 exceptions during the speedrun. Riding Boko during the intro sequence, the first Karnak Castle visit after being freed from the prison cells, and walking around Tycoon Castle before reaching Boko on World 3. Event tiles will not advance the danger rate, such as tiles that trigger cutscenes or doors opening. There is a lot of them throughout the game, so I will point them out on a case-by-case basis. Just pay attention to the Lua Script, and if the danger rate doesn't advance, it means the room in question is safe to walk around, or you have stepped over an event tile. Now, everything we talked about so far falls under dungeon navigation. Overworld steps have a few more rules. In the Overworld, you can refresh the danger rate by pausing. Entering a town or dungeon also refreshes the danger rate. There are event tiles in the Overworld, so you have to watch out for those as well. Every Overworld map in this game is divided by an 8x8 grid, which determines the enemy domains for the entire square. There are a handful of squares that will not advance the danger rate depending on the vehicle you are using. In the Overworld, it's possible to cancel steps from registering. If you hold pause while transitioning from one tile to the next, you can perform a technique we call half steps. A half step is calling the menu on the same frame as you move into another tile, which cancels a step. By holding down the X button while moving from one tile to another, you can buffer the input and do this frame perfectly. Half steps do not work in dungeons. This only applies for Overworld segments. Half steps are one of the very few ways to recover step manipulation, so it's an essential tool to have when performing a step route. As for vehicles, riding airborne vehicles will not advance the danger rate. However, landing them does. Furthermore, you can also perform half steps when landing vehicles. You would only have to hold the X button during the landing transition and you will successfully perform a half step. Also, you have to be careful about pausing with airborne vehicles. If you call the menu by pressing X before landing, unpause, and you land on the same tile you paused on while in the air, the game will register a half step, which can mess up your step manipulation. And we should be done here. Hopefully you have a better understanding of how random encounters happen, which will prove a useful tool when regaining step manipulation during a run. Usually, you cannot make mistakes if you are going for a step route. Once you get an extra encounter, your formations will advance beyond recovery, which is why this is so tough. You will always have to perform the same actions when performing a step manipulation though, so it's a matter of practice.